Welcome back the Honorable Penny Pritzker, Secretary of Commerce of the United States, for an armchair discussion with Mr. Eric Schmidt, Executive Chairman of Google.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for joining us here for our SelectUSA Summit. As you can see, we have an extraordinary turnout. I thought it would be fun for all of you. Eric is a well-known figure to all of us. He was CEO of Google for a decade and has been executive chairman now, I think, for about 3 or 4 years of Google. But I thought I would share a few little fun facts about Eric that I was able to learn through my Google search. Eric was an intern at Bell Labs. While he was there, he rewrote an early version of the Unix operating code. So he's an engineer through and through. Another early interesting fact about Eric is he was a long-distance runner, earning 8 varsity awards during high school. So,
thank you.
An athlete, an engineer. This is very impressive, very, very impressive. You ran 2 iconic companies. You ran Novell, and you were the chief technology officer at Sun Microsystem. But the thing I loved that I learned were some of the April Fool's jokes that people have played on you, including rebuilding a Volkswagen Beetle, I think, in your office. That's a story for another time.
Let's just say they had a lot of free time.
Yeah, well, a very creative group. Very, very creative group. So Eric, Google's an iconic company. What's, I think, probably extraordinary to step back and reflect is the fact that it was founded in 1998, Menlo Park, a community I grew up in, and today it's an iconic brand, a global brand. You have presence in over 40 countries around the world. Could Google have become Google if it had been founded in any other country?
Well, first, Madam Secretary, thank you for doing this. And I can't think of a better opportunity to talk to everybody about what we're doing and some models that really work. And what's interesting about Google is there's pretty good evidence that there's a bunch of countries it could not have been founded in because you needed a particular kind of copyright law that would allow for fair use. Technically the use of snippets. And there are a number of countries, many of which have changed their laws, which actually would have made it criminal to found a company like Google.
Ah, I didn't know that. Wow. So what makes the United States an investment climate that allows a company like Google to thrive?
Well, it's really all about the people and the structure. So there's the usual things like rule of law and those sorts of things. But what is
you mean the list that I use?
Yes, the things that you're the things that you're subject to, at all of us. But what's really interesting about America is the investment that was done by a set of things maybe 50 years ago by a guy named Vannevar Bush. And what he did is he created a structure of investment in research universities that created the modern research university in America. And those research universities are producing entrepreneurs at this huge rate. And they're being produced in all sorts of parts of the US and also outside the United States. And we're fortunate that many foreign students try to come to them as well. And if we'll give them a visa, they'll stay.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other issue.
Yes, well, we agree on that issue
You and
already.
I are on the same page when it comes to that. How does the public sector and the private sector in the United States strengthen our investment climate, and what are some of the impediments you see?
Well, I've actually been surprised that in traveling through America, things are going well everywhere. And for a very long time, in the last 5 years, there were signs of growth in certain areas, in particular on the West Coast, certain parts of the East Coast. But much of the middle part of the country was in trouble unless you did fracking, in which case you had a local boom. And maybe it's the rising tide lifts all boats, or maybe because it's capitalism as we practice it is working. But we're now seeing growth literally in every state and in every city, which is not what was expected. It was expected that we would be a 2-tier economy for a decade, and it's really now fixed. So that's great news.
Are you seeing innovation across the country?
The innovation is concentrated around universities and centers. And one of the things that when we did all the internet work years ago, we were all convinced that you could go and sit and drink wine in Napa Valley and write programs and work with your friend who was in Texas and your friend who was in Hawaii and so forth. And that's not how it really works. What really works is that innovation centers are formed around an area. Take a look at Cambridge, Massachusetts, and look at the biotech and the sort of life sciences industry that's been created there. Obviously in Silicon Valley, the software industry, you have a whole bunch of companies there. You have, in Seattle, you have the spin-offs from Microsoft, et cetera. They tend to be geographically located. Houston, obviously, the source of oil.
But you're seeing it in Austin, you're seeing it in Boulder. I mean, you've just
but again, as we have, but again, Austin is UT Austin.
Exactly.
Boulder is UC Colorado at Boulder. So if you're going to do this, you have to have a world-class university that is producing these people into the system. And that seems to be the model. Without that world-class university, you're just not going to get there. Research Triangle, North Carolina has 3 magnificent universities, is a center of both IT innovation and life sciences. It's one of the 10 big centers.
So talking a little bit more about a skilled workforce and a productive workforce, what are the challenges that you find in both locating the employees that you want as well as the kind of skills that you're looking for and the training that you want? And how do you work with the universities or the training organizations?
Well, one of the things about, in my view about economics, is that you want to create as many entrepreneurs as you can. Because entrepreneurs create an unfair share of jobs, if you will. They take risks, they get funded through the venture capital industry, invented largely here in America, but now available everywhere. And they take these risks, they get all these people, and off they go. So young people, typically the targets of these things, will relocate. So it's interesting that you have to have a destination that young people are willing to relocate, which ultimately means, the equivalent of coffee bars and an urban setting. They don't typically relocate to rural or suburban areas, although there are some exceptions. And there needs to be something which they see as cool or current or so forth. And there are cities outside of America, for example, in the Shoreditch area in London, there's an attempt to build a center. In a part of the old East Berlin, there's a very nice center that's being created like this. So people are trying this with some success. But it looks to me like you've got to create the physical environment, people will move to it, and you'll get the people. With respect to the talent, obviously the most important part, it just seems like we should be creating as many smart people as we can, and if we can't create them, we should let them immigrate into the country.
So talking a little bit more about talent and the challenge of women in the STEM fields. What do you think that we should be doing to get more women into the STEM fields? I mean, we've got 50% of our college, over 50% of our college graduates are women, over 50% of the workforce is women, and yet the presence of women in STEM fields is below at least the natural percentage it ought to be.
The numbers are quite interesting. 58% of the people in the U.S. are female now in universities. Mm-hmm. Even in the top universities, it's 52 to 48% female. So this has occurred in my generation, mm-hmm. right? This is and obviously yours as well. It's a huge and positive change. So there's a set of issues of which this is one. And no one seems to quite have a good solution here. Companies in my industry are working hard to identify women, do recruiting. There's a story at Google from years ago that we measure everything. And one of the questions we said is when we interviewed people, we interviewed them and then we looked at their performance a year later. And were the score we gave them when we hired them the same as their performance a year later? Straightforward question. And it turns out for men, the scores were accurate. And for women, they were completely the opposite. So that would indicate some kind of a bias in the way we were judging our female candidates, which we've worked on improving. And this is, again, I'm sure this is true in other places as well. There's something about the tech culture, the way we approach it, the sort of incentives and so forth that is driving women away. And what's interesting is if you look at fields like biology medicine, law. They're now majority female. So there's plenty examples that women are fantastic at these things. There's every reason to believe. Why are they not more in tech? I don't think we really know yet. We're working on it.
So going back to Google a little bit, obviously Google's moved beyond being just a search engine. You have driverless cars, you've got smart thermostats, you're doing all kinds of innovation in many different fields. What's allowed for such a multidisciplinary expansion at Google?
Well, it helps to have high gross margins, right?
Profits.
You know, I think when people write the history of Google, one of the things they'll say is that it was fortunate that we started with what you know as the advertising search model, the targeted search, return on investment search for these digital ads, which has been a very, very good business for us, and it has allowed us to create these bets, right? So it allowed us to build Gmail, it allowed us to build the enterprise business, it allowed us to invest in Google X. Those investments, which take a decade, by the way, I mean, they take a very long time, they're supported by this. And I remember Microsoft had the same property that when we were sort of studying Microsoft when I was a younger executive, they had because they were in this sort of huge space of PC and they had very high gross margins, they had the flexibility to do new things. So there's a certain amount of luck involved. What's interesting about the car example, the first self-driving cars were imagined and discussed roughly in the late 90s. The first self-driving car won what was known as the DARPA Grand Challenge in 2004. Now it's 2015, and we're still not in self-driving cars. So it gives you a sense of how long these things actually take.
So when you think about Google, do you think about core competency, or are you driven by the creativity of your R&D? How do you think about what avenues and what paths to pick?
Well, it helps to have strong founders. Mm-hmm. So the two founders have a very clear model of what technology leadership looks like. And they've obviously done it for now 15 or more years. And they're very good at identifying the kind of entrepreneurial talent that will do this. So I'll give you an example. Google formed something called the Google Life Sciences Division. And there was a particular doctor who wanted to work on medical technology, and he needed not just doctors, but also engineers, computer scientists, and so forth. And he was able to attract the team very quickly. And out of that, he built a contact lens. And this contact lens detects changes in your blood glucose level. And for people who have diabetes, which is a common problem in America and likely to become much worse, this is a godsend. So in a couple of years, they were able to build this contact lens, which has the world's smallest battery, I might add, literally inside the lens, and then license that to a big company that does sort of contact lenses. And that'll eventually show up on the market after the appropriate testing. Now, how does that happen? Well, we knew this fella, he was the right guy, right? He had the right vision, he fit well in the culture, he was able to recruit people quickly to these teams, and it happened fast. So it's a combination of the culture, but especially the technical individual who has the vision to build this. The same thing was true, for example, of Google Glass, or the balloons which float around. They're example after example.
So it's really about attitude as opposed to saying this is what we're good at and this is what we're going to avoid.
I like to think of it as systematic innovation. Most companies do one thing really well, and they don't invent a future and they don't invent adjacent things. Whereas in our case, we've been able to keep inventing these new things, and not all of them work, and some of them are delayed, and some of them happen faster. For example, the contact lens happened so far faster than I ever expected it to, because it just worked. So that's a win. Other things take longer.
And do you think the conglomerate of the future has that kind of attitude of constant innovation?
Well, I would shy away from the word conglomerate. I think that corporations are human collections of values, and the culture of Google is a very specific one. I mean, if you look in the tech industry, Apple is sort of the #1 most valued company, I think, maybe in the world, but certainly in the US, and Google is sort of near #2. Two different companies, two completely different corporate values, both of which produce excellent products, right? So you can get there in multiple ways, but you have to get there in a coherent way.
And so, what are the developments in technology you're most excited about?
Well, for the next little while, the answer is going to be mobile phone, mobile phone, mobile phone, and mobile phone, and maybe mobile phone. Did I say mobile phone enough? Or should we talk about smartphones, Android, iPhone, and we'll talk about smartphones some more? The entire industry has switched to the smartphone as the access device for everything. And every single thing in your personal life, your professional life, the way you live, the way you work, will be controlled, measured, monitored, and so forth by applications that are yet to be invented on smartphones. That is the next 5 to 10 years, I would say. So the real question is what happens on the back end? And there the answer is broadband, 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 and broadband. The same argument, because these phones are not very useful without very high-speed networks. And in fact, you are part of a team that the United States just announced to do broadband choices and more investment, so we obviously support that. And for those of you who are not from the US, it's very, very important to have a national broadband plan, to work very, very hard to get broadband adoption, and in my view, to have competitive broadband choices, because competition is how you really get these things working. And the rate at which broadband is improving is profound. We have something in Kansas City, which is a gigabit fiber maneuver. And a gigabit is so fast, it changes the way you think of the information. There's never a delay, it's always there. You just live inside the information. It's changed the economics of Kansas City, and there's some evidence that it's improved the debt rating for the city because it actually attracts so much investment. We are in fact doing this in roughly 24 cities around the nation so far, and we hope to expand, in the future as we are more and more successful. So the answer is broadband. And then the back end is called cloud computing, and there's a great deal of investment there. Having said that, what happens after that? Most people think that it will be very powerful notions of intelligence, where computers really help you sort of get through life, make decisions, the kind of sort of judgment that you need, should I go here, should I go there, what are my choices, how do I decide these questions, making you smarter, and that's probably the future.
So as you think about these digital technologies that can make us smarter and make better decisions or help us, how do you see that transforming manufacturing?
Manufacturing has been in this enormous investment for a couple of decades. And the sort of transition now to robotic manufacturing is well underway globally. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing this not just in the US and in Europe and in Japan, but also now even in countries like China. It's reasonable to expect that Guangzhou and so forth will be heavily automated over the next little while. So the next question is the mechanical devices, the industrial robots, the arms and so forth. Can they become smarter through various forms of sensors and sensor technology and software? And there's many, many companies working on that. So the answer, of course, there is the assembly line just gets flexible, right? Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about it is everyone is always afraid of these things, but in fact the evidence is that the highest wage growth is from the human who operates the computer that is automating the manufacturing line. That's the job you want.
And how do we train for that job?
Well, it's a big problem. As you know, there's a big skills mismatch in America. Things are going so well, right, that there are key shortages of of candidates for jobs that are laying, and they're typically pretty technical. You've been involved, and the White House has been involved in a number of initiatives to try to do what is generally known as STEM education. But the basic message is our workforces need to be more technologically savvy and more technically trained in order to coexist and operate these new devices, whether it's building smart batteries or building cars or doing software programming and so forth. And I think that's probably an evergreen issue. I think it'll be true this year, it'll probably be true next year, it'll probably be true for many years because the demand is so great.
So you described this really exciting world where our smartphone is going to be our access to everything, where broadband is really critical and training is really critical. And so that makes the future of the internet sound really exciting. But earlier this year, you made news when you predicted that the internet will disappear.
Right.
Can you tell us more about that?
Well, let me ask you a question. Did anyone here think about how well the power works in this building? Anyone think about how well the heating works? Right?
We
the
did,
car.
putting this event together.
No, but our guests, right?
Yeah, no. They didn't
This
afford it.
morning I came here by car. It didn't occur to me that the car would fail along the way.
Right.
I didn't have my trusty wrench to go reinflate the tire. What happens is that as these technologies get established, we take them for granted and they effectively disappear. Now, let's say 100 years ago, this area was a swamp. And you can be quite sure that one of the great debates in this particular area of Maryland was, should it be electrified? And furthermore, should it be electrified by AC or DC? Now, this was nerd heaven, right? We're having a big debate between the electrical engineers on one side and the electrical engineers on the other, right? And they're all saying, how are we going to electrify this swamp without killing ourselves? Right? We don't have those debates anymore. Mm-hmm. So, in many, many examples, the internet, which we think of today as this novel thing, will become a normal way we operate, right? That it'll become part of our daily life. It will seem odd to you if the internet is not available. Right? Typical example, many of you are staying here in the hotel. You probably have to pay a fee. Well, that's the stupidest thing ever. You don't pay a fee for the air or the water, right? The internet will be free, and it'll be much faster. Same thing, same argument.
So we talked a little bit earlier before we came on stage about, obviously you have a perspective of operating in 40 different countries around the world, and in a funny way you were born global. Google was born global, which is something I keep promoting around the country. What are the barriers to your operations? What trade, what are the impediments, what are the things that you encounter that worry you the most?
Well, we have a set of them. There are a number of governments that don't fundamentally like having all the information available for everyone. So that's a big issue. We have various regulatory issues. There are there are many countries where there are information regulations that are either difficult for us to implement or don't make sense to us. Europe just passed a law called the right to be forgotten, which allows you to have your content in Google be deleted, but not deleted from the newspapers that wrote it, which doesn't make any sense to us. But nevertheless, that's the law. At the end of the day, we try to stay on the side of consumers. And we say, look, if you want to be a modern country, you've got to be open to Google, Facebook, Yahoo, and so forth and so on, and Twitter. And yes, it's pesky that we're giving information to your political opponents and so forth, but it's a better country if it's more transparent. I mean, just think about we talk about the American values that we're celebrating in your conference here. Transparency is a key one. Mm-hmm. The rule of law, sort of the ability to go bankrupt, the ability to have business failures, the ability to sort of be an honest broker. And the farther the country is away from that, and there are countries which are in good shape there and countries which are not, the more we're in trouble for those reasons.
I spend a good portion of my time traveling the world talking to these countries and trying to explain to them that the Googles of the world, the entrepreneurs of the world need these things like transparency, the right to fail, an easy ability to start a business.
Yeah, and a typical example is every political leader wants economic growth, right? That's how they remain in, whether they're an autocrat or a Democrat, they are, fundamentally job growth is key. Well, one of the ways to get job growth is to have new companies. So ask the question of your local entrepreneurs, what does it take to create a company, right? In many, many countries, the laws are written for larger companies. So an answer could be a carve-out, right? That these kinds of laws don't apply to very small companies. Right? And that's a cultural problem, but it's probably the right answer because it enables people at least to get started.
Well, and you don't even have to be in a technologically advanced company to experience these challenges. There are some countries, and I'm not going to pit one country against another, but where to get the right to build, let's say, a hotel, you need 6 approvals. Yeah. And there are other countries where you need 100. And just that number tells you a lot about doing business in those countries.
And by the way, there's differences in America on the same issues. So both as a political matter, but as an operational matter, you see this. At the end of the day, you need to create an atmosphere where people are willing to invest and they're willing to take their own personal risks with respect to their own money, creating companies, creating jobs. I mean, you just have to do it.
So Eric, you've been close to this administration and an advisor to all of us in many things. You know, this administration's working hard to try and improve the investment climate. Obviously, we've invited many, many firms from around the world. You know, we're focused on trying to make sure our market is more open, not just here in the United States, but that the United States can be a place where we can do business. You can do business from the United States. So our trade agreements, advancing talent initiatives, supporting advanced manufacturing, investing in infrastructure, pushing forward business tax reform. You know, are there other things that you think we should be doing here? Are there lessons we should be learning from other countries?
Well, I think it's worth, I think in general the approach we're taking here is correct. Things in America still take too long, and it's still the best place to be investing in my view right now, because at least in this product cycle. And I would say that for the firms that are represented in this audience that are not based in America, you need to have a US operation, and given the relatively strong dollar, you'll probably make more money in the US than you will elsewhere, right? The inverse was true when the euro was strong. So I think it makes sense to have an operation here, and you should put those operations where the kind of talent is that you care about, right? Because again, the country is not uniformly distributed in talent. They're in different spots. One of the things, the interesting phenomena, just talk about cities as a point. In the next 30 years, 2 billion people will move to cities around the world. Most of that in the developing world, many of them in China, India, Indonesia, et cetera. Those cities are going to get built. And there are leadership programs in Europe and in America who have really studied what a smart city looks like. So there's a case where we all kind of have the same goal, which is to have cities that are engines of innovation. I mean, the general rule is cities are where the innovation is going to occur for a while, it looks like. These cities can be instrumented, the services can be delivered in much more efficient ways. We had this funny story yesterday of a city that wired up basically the garbage cans, and they would only empty them if they were full. Now, this is not exactly a sexy answer, but in fact, it's a very efficient answer. So you can basically measure this kind of stuff and operationalize it using software to huge benefit to your customers. So just imagine smart cities as an initiative. Smart cities is something which is going to be this huge market, right? It's all going to be heavily networked, heavily software intensive, and that's a pretty good area to start.
Terrific. Well, Eric, we are very fortunate not only to have you here, but to leading a great American company. And thank you for all your insights, and thank you for your great work.
Well, and thank you all for coming. I hope you've enjoyed these 2 days. Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to tour the exhibition hall for information about investment opportunities. Our next breakout panel sessions will begin at 2 p.m.